Some philosophers try to help you make sense of life. Others argue that life itself is the problem. Arthur Schopenhauer believed life was nothing but suffering. Emil Cioran thought being born was a catastrophe. But this Norwegian philosopher? He took it even further, believing that human consciousness was a tragic mistake. But who was Peter Wessel Zapffe? And what exactly did he mean by the tragic sense of life? Peter Zapffe was born in 1899 in Tromsø, Norway, a place where nature is both breathtaking and brutal. He wasn't just a philosopher, he was a mountaineer, a writer, and an adventurer, scaling Norway's deadliest peaks. But beneath his love for nature, he saw something deeply disturbing. To Zapffe, existence itself was a mistake. He wasn't searching for meaning, he was questioning why we even look for it. While studying law at the University of Oslo, he became obsessed with Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, and Kierkegaard. But unlike them, he didn't believe life had a deeper answer waiting to be found. Instead, he argued that human consciousness had evolved too far, leaving us aware of our own mortality but completely unequipped to handle it. Instead of searching for some ultimate meaning, Zapffe believed we were clinging to an illusion. He argued that meaning wasn't discovered, it was invented. Religion, philosophy, and even personal ambitions were all just sophisticated ways to distract ourselves from the unbearable truth. We don't seek knowledge to understand the universe. We seek it to avoid confronting the fact that the universe is indifferent to us. In 1933, he published The Last Messiah, a short but devastating essay that laid out his entire philosophy. Consciousness wasn't a gift, it was a curse. And since we can't undo it, we survive by lying to ourselves, distracting ourselves, and pretending life has meaning. So why have we never heard of this guy? Zapffe isn't famous like Nietzsche or Schopenhauer, and that's not just because he wrote in Norwegian. His ideas are far more unsettling. He wasn't part of a big philosophical movement, didn't have a school of thought backing him, and didn't care about building a legacy. While other philosophers debated meaning, Zapffe was climbing mountains, writing stories, and quietly developing the darkest theory of them all. Consciousness itself is a mistake. Even among pessimists, his conclusions are extreme. Schopenhauer found escape in art. Nietzsche believed in self-overcoming. Even Cioran, for all his despair, had a sense of humor. But Zapffe? He didn't believe in hope at all. For years, this idea was too bleak to even consider. But today, with more people drowning in burnout, isolation, and existential dread, Zapffel's philosophy feels eerily relevant. Zapffe believed human consciousness was a mistake, a cruel joke played by evolution. Zapffe saw this not as a philosophical crisis, but as a biological accident. Evolution gave us intelligence, but no way to handle its consequences. We don't just react to danger, we obsess over every possible disaster. We don't just feel emotions, we overanalyze them. We don't just live, we question why we're here in the first place. Animals live without questioning their existence. A deer doesn't stress about the future, a bird doesn't wonder about the meaning of life, but humans, we became aware of death, time, and the terrifying emptiness of it all. And that awareness ruined us. He called this the tragic sense of life, and since we can't unsee reality, we survive by lying to ourselves. Most people, Zapffe argued, live in denial. We build belief systems, chase distractions, and cling to comforting illusions to avoid facing the horrifying truth. Because if we didn't, we'd collapse into cosmic panic, a total breakdown in the face of meaninglessness. Zapffe illustrated this with one of his most haunting metaphors in his book, The Last Messiah, 1933. The tragedy of a species becoming unfit for life by over-evolving one ability is not confined to humankind. Certain deer in paleontological times succumbed as they acquired overly heavy horns. He was talking about the Irish elk, a prehistoric deer whose antlers grew so large they became a death sentence. At first, they were useful, but over time they got too big, too heavy, making movement impossible and leaving the elk defenseless. Eventually, they went extinct, and to Zapffe, human intelligence is just like those antlers. At first, our consciousness helped us survive. We built tools, formed societies, and conquered the world. But then it went too far. We started questioning everything. We became obsessed with time. We realized death was inevitable. Instead of helping us, our overgrown intelligence became a burden. In The Last Messiah, he also wrote that in the biological experiment, the human race has brought down upon itself a disquieting surplus of consciousness. It is an over-evolution, like the stag's antlers. This is the heart of Zapffel's philosophy. We were never meant to be happy. Other animals don't need meaning. They don't fear the abyss, but humans? We stare into it every single day, and because of that, we suffer. For Zapffe, the tragedy isn't just that we die. The tragedy of man is not that he dies, but that he is conscious of dying. Last Messiah, 1933. Death is inevitable for all living things, but only humans are cursed with the knowledge of it. We are the only creatures who carry the burden of our own impermanence, and since we can't change this fact, we do the only thing we can. We repress it. He laid out 4 ways we do this, 4 philosophical defense mechanisms that help us survive. But here's the brutal truth. None of them actually work. They just delay the inevitable. The first and most basic is isolation. The easiest way to handle reality? Ignore it. Don't think about death. Don't bring up morality at dinner. Don't dwell on the fact that everything you love will eventually disappear. Every culture has unspoken rules about avoiding these topics, not because they aren't important, but because they're unbearable. And the mind knows this. It locks those thoughts away, lets us pretend that death is a distant, abstract thing instead of the one certainty we all share. But this illusion? It's fragile. A funeral, an accident, an empty room, and suddenly, reality hits hard. When ignoring reality stops working, we cling to something else. Anchoring. This is how we convince ourselves that life isn't just a countdown to oblivion. Some turn to religion, believing in an afterlife that takes the sting out of death. Others throw themselves into work, family, or patriotism, anything that makes them feel like they matter. But Zapffe saw these as life lies, stories we invent to keep from falling apart, and they work until they don't. Lose your faith, your job, your purpose, and suddenly the illusion shatters, and what's left? The truth we were trying so hard to escape. And if that fails, we distract ourselves. Distraction is the easiest, most convenient way to escape reality, and the modern world is built for it. We binge watch shows, scroll endlessly, drown ourselves in work not because we need to, but because stopping means facing thoughts we don't want. The speed of life today isn't a coincidence. It's a defense mechanism. As long as there's another video to watch, another notification to check, we don't have to think about the fact that none of this actually means anything. But even distraction has its limits. The moment the screen goes dark, the music stops, and you're left alone with your thoughts, the void comes creeping back in. And so then, there's sublimation, the rarest and most sophisticated way out. This is when people don't run from their existential dread, they reshape it. They turn it into music, art, philosophy, literature, something that makes the suffering feel meaningful. A painter wrestles with despair through color. A poet turns their fear of death into verse that outlive them. A philosopher spends a lifetime asking questions no one can answer. Even Zapffe admitted his entire philosophy was just another form of sublimation, a way to make the unbearable bearable. But here's the catch. It doesn't change reality. It just makes suffering feel productive. It turns pain into beauty, but the pain is still there. And that's the problem with all 4 of these coping mechanisms. They don't fix anything. They don't stop the truth from being true. You can distract yourself endlessly, but the silence always catches up. So if every escape is temporary, what's left? For Zapffe, there was only one real solution: end the cycle. If life is suffering, why pass this suffering on? In The Last Messiah, he imagines a figure revealing the ultimate truth to humanity. Know yourselves, be infertile, and let the earth be silent after you. To Zapffe, having children wasn't just a personal choice, it was an act of cruelty. It meant bringing someone into a world defined by struggle, fear, and inevitable death. Where Schopenhauer sought refuge in art and Nietzsche called for self-overcoming, Zapffe took it a step further. He didn't just question life's meaning, he questioned the very act of continuing life at all. And yet, despite his radical views, he didn't live like a man drowning in despair. He climbed mountains, captured breathtaking photographs, and wrote with a detached, almost clinical tone. He was another paradox in a long line of pessimistic thinkers, like Schopenhauer doting on his pet poodle, or Chorin laughing at the absurdity of existence. He saw life as a mistake, but he still lived it. So what does that mean for us? If Zapffe was right, should we all just give up? Or does knowing the truth free us instead of destroying us? Maybe the answer isn't in choosing one extreme or the other. Maybe it's in the tension between them, because at the end of the day, the real question isn't whether life is absurd. The real question is, what do we do with that absurdity? So, was Zapffe right? Should we just give up on life? Or is there something to fight for? Maybe the real answer isn't to deny suffering, but to acknowledge it and live anyway. Because in the end, no matter what philosophy we follow, we all face the same questions. Is existence really worth it?